So I want to take a listen from Colin Cowherd earlier today. He did a segment on the Lions-Packers game. I have not watched it yet, so I want to watch it here with you guys and give my reaction to whatever it is he's about to say here. So here we go.
Operating in absolutes usually does not end well. Just think about that. Operating in absolutes. Dan Campbell now coaches like, we always go for it on fourth down. And this morning, Lion fans, they feel great. And it is great when you're 3-13-1. But do you know the teams since Dan Campbell arrived in the NFL that don't go for it on fourth down? Do you know who they are? The Chiefs, the Bills, and the Niners. They protect leads. You're no longer the hunter. You're the hunted. You're now IBM. You're not a startup company. Dan Campbell can no longer be a pro wrestler living up to the gimmick. They lead the NFL in fourth down attempts and fourth down conversions, and you feel great this morning, but that's not who you are anymore. It's like when you're young, put your money in Bitcoin. When you're old, put it in bonds. It's a different life. The runway now, your players are now in their prime. They're going to get very, very expensive. You're going to have to move off them. You're playing consistently with leads. In my lifetime, I don't ever remember a team winning the Super Bowl that had the all-season label of, man, they are risky. New England wasn't. Kansas City isn't. Buffalo isn't. That's not what wins championships. Last year against Dallas, by the way, 2-point conversions, week 17. Remember we kept going for those? It cost you the game, and it cost you the playoff tiebreaker. So this eventually won't win. Kansas City, Buffalo, and San Francisco, since Dan Campbell came in the league, the three winningest teams, don't go for it. They're protecting leads, protecting assets. Like right now, Detroit should be buying insurance for this mansion they've built, for all these beautiful assets they have. But they're just used to losing. The Tigers lose, the Pistons lose, the Lions lose. It's Loserville, and they've never been in this spot. But you are no longer the looking uphill at everybody else. You're looking down at everybody. You're leading these games. You need to ensure wins. Reckless is not going to,
Okay, so far I get Colin's point here. I think that it depends on situation. For example, last night in the Packers-Lions game, I think going for it a lot of times when you're at fourth and goal made sense there. But I think the one that didn't make sense is when they're on their own, 30 or whatever. That one, I'm like, that was too risky. You give the Packers the ball with like 30 yards to go to the end zone. But I do think the final play, or one of the final plays to go for it on fourth down, honestly, as a Packers fan, I didn't want them to go for it on fourth down because I thought, they're probably going to convert it. They've converted it all game. This is one of the best offenses in the league. And so I think when you have the best offense in the league and you're in that situation and you know your defense has consistently allowed Jordan Love in the second half to easily move the ball down the field, he probably sat there to himself, thought, okay, if we do not convert this, there's a good chance Jordan Love goes down the field and, gets into field goal range. If we get 1 yard, then the game's pretty much over. Jordan Love does not get the ball. And so I think that it wasn't that risky of a decision in the final moments. Now, because most coaches wouldn't do that, it does put all the pressure on Dan Campbell, because if it didn't work, then obviously today it's like, oh, Dan Campbell, what the heck is he thinking? But in this scenario, let's say he kicked a field goal, Jordan Love moved on the field, got into field goal range, the Packers somehow win that game, not on the field goal, but maybe in overtime, or if they had moved the ball on the field in 40 seconds and scored a touchdown, no one's really getting on Dan Campbell. You'd probably just be getting on the Lions defense. And so in those situations, it would push the pressure off of him, but he doesn't seem to mind doing that. And I think last night, the end of the game, it wasn't a bad decision.
That play when there's 43 seconds left and you go for it, kick the field goal. Even analytics said, kick the field goal. Good God, just take the lead. Green Bay's got 43 seconds and no timeouts left, and they just stopped you on 3rd and 1. They couldn't do it on 4th and 1. This thing, Jared Goff fell down, and it was almost a disaster. Just take the lead. Again, when companies grow, when you're a startup company, you can take swings at stuff because you have nothing to lose. Detroit now has stuff to lose. Super Bowls, not games. Home field advantage. Here comes Philadelphia. Super Bowls. Minnesota is on your heels. You have a lot more to lose now. Well, I don't believe in playing it safe. Playing it safe is Michigan against Penn State second half, never throwing the ball. Not going for it when you can, for 43 seconds left, take the lead is not playing it safe. It's playing it reasonable. And everybody in life has to pivot. Again, stuff I did at 20s, I'm not doing once I have kids. Stuff I invested in when I was 20, I'm not doing now. I don't have the runway to make that kind of money. Detroit's different now. They're looking down. They're not looking up. You got to pivot, and they're a very good team, but they're so beat up defensively now. The margins are getting tight. The margins are getting very small in these games. They don't look like they did in October, and that means situational football will be king. That's why Andy Reid is winning Super Bowls. It's why Sean Payton has turned around the Broncos in year 2 with a rookie quarterback. He's winning those situational moments, and sometimes the winning isn't going forward. It's field position. It's punting. It's not beating yourself.
Just a second here. What's the Broncos' record currently? What's the Broncos' record? I think it's like 7 or let me look it up here. Because currently the Lions are 12-1, and he's using the Broncos as an example for what you should be doing. And the Broncos have been fine. They're 8-5, but I mean they've lost 4 more games than the Lions. So, I mean, I honestly, as a Packers fan, the Lions have made wise decisions. And when you're Dan Campbell, when you have the best offense in the league, the Packers weren't able to stop you on 4th down most of the game, and you don't allow Jordan Love to get on the field, and we've seen what he can do very fast. I almost think he was almost safer in a sense to go for it there. Just my
So this morning, everybody feels good. But to me, 43 seconds left, going for it, Goff almost falls. What if there's a fumble? And then, I mean, seriously, when he fell, I'm thinking, oh my God, this reminds me of Joe Pisarcik, the Giants and the Eagles 30 years ago in the NFL. You guys don't remember that if you're in your 20s and 30s. That was almost a disaster of epic proportions, right? I was like, oh my God. I loved Dan Campbell's ethos and the way he built this startup. But they're not a startup. You know, they're not first year after Blockbuster Netflix. They're like the king of streaming. Like, this is the best roster probably in football. They're setting records. I mean, last night is a prime example of what playoff football looks like. Detroit couldn't run the ball. They couldn't run the ball. They got into a tight game at home. That's a playoff game. And again, I just think this city has had so many losing teams that they don't realize now. They're no longer the hunter. They are the hunted. And when they go into the playoffs, the pressure now mounts. You'll be a number 1 seed. It mounts. Teams are tight. Your defense isn't as good. You're beat up. No reason to be reckless. No reason to be. There's a big difference between taking smart, reasonable risk and reckless. But
I know that you can play the what-if game, saying what if they didn't get on 4th down, and today if the Packers had stopped them on 4th down, gotten into field goal range and kicked the field goal, then everything would be, wow, what a terrible decision by Dan Campbell. And so I don't think you can always base the, you know, your opinion on the decision based on the outcome, because, you know, when you're making the decision, you're having to weigh the pros and cons of each decision. And in this scenario, I mean, you could play the what if game of, you know, what if the Lions kick that field goal and Jordan Love, the Packers, somehow scored a touchdown. I mean, I know the odds are slim in that scenario, but, you know, Jordan Love has shown that he can do that. He can move the ball down the field 70 yards in a few plays. I mean, it's possible, and the Lions' defense was giving up a lot in the second half, so you can play the what-if game either way. I don't think in the end there was like a drastic difference between both decisions. I think either one could have made sense, because if you go for it on 4th down, you obviously win the game. If you miss it, there's a chance you lose it, but you can sort of play it each way, and I think either decision wasn't a terrible decision in my opinion.
This morning, everybody feels great. Let's talk Green Bay. So I've said this a few times. The Packers are the Lions last year. They're 1 year away. They're really, really close. Green Bay is excellent. Head coach, excellent. Quarterback, excellent. Skill people, excellent. Jordan Love he just needs more seasoning. When he came out of Utah State, he was a project. Well, he's not a project anymore, but he's not quite there. You saw in the first half, he only had 3 completions. The last 2 years, he started off, and he has to literally go.
I mean, I would argue early in that game, that was mainly the offensive line's problem. The Packers could not stop the Detroit's blitz, even though the Lions had so many injured players. I mean, Jordan Love was having to run for his life out there. He only got sacked, how many times? I think was it once overall? Or the Packers sacked Goff once? I mean, it was something like that, if I could pull it up right here. But, I think Jordan Love played a very, very good game. He hasn't thrown a pick in, 3 games? And so, yeah, the Lions gave up 1 sack in that one. I do not think that's on Jordan Love. The Packers still put up 31 points. Yes, they need to get off to a faster start. That's something that, no doubt, you can't argue with that. Against some of these better teams, they've gotten off to slow starts. Luckily, the second halves the Packers have played really good football in the second half offensively. The first few drives were ugly. Christian Watson fumbles the ball. The other 2 drives, it was just, there was pressure in his face so quickly. So
going to the Matt LaFleur School of Quarterbacking. So he's only started 30 games. And to give you some idea of how few that is, Mac Jones has 45 starts. Okay, he's got like 50% more starts. So, I mean, Jaden Reed almost got no looks last night. So, Jordan Love is really, really good. So is the coach. So is the running back. So are the skill people. Really good. But I feel like there's steps in everything. You really see it in the NBA. Giannis was good. Then he was great. Then he was dominant. There's a title. Then he gets older. Then he gets aging. Then he gets hurt. Like, there's steps to all this stuff. San Francisco is a great example. Last 5 years, they felt like Detroit. That's the best roster probably in the NFL. And then all of a sudden it gets expensive and brittle, and all of a sudden it falls. So right now, Green Bay is a stock, and it is just going up, up, up. And I think it's 1 year away. Maybe not. Maybe they shock the world. But Green Bay is 9-4. So they've lost to the Lions twice, the Eagles and the Vikings. They're 9-0 against everybody else. So they're losing to the right teams. And last night, I thought, I'll be honest with you, when they got the interception, so they start the second half of the ball, they get a touchdown, and they get an interception, and they get another touchdown, I thought it was Green Bay's night. And we'll talk more about that. But they're close. They're really, really close. There's not much about Green Bay I don't like. I'm watching those two teams last night with my wife, and she's from Detroit, and I'm like, what you're watching are two really, really good football teams. Top 5 teams. Those are 2 top 5 teams in the league. And Detroit may be number 1 and Green Bay be number 5, whatever. Those are 2 top 5 teams. And I kept thinking, poor Chicago. Poor Chicago Bears. I mean, you better get the right coach, because Green Bay is not, they don't have players in their prime yet. Jordan Love's not in his prime yet. All those receivers, tight ends, they're not in their prime yet. Detroit's players are just, Penei Sewell, are just entering their prime. So Detroit's a year ahead, in my opinion, of what Green Bay is. But I kept thinking, boy, Chicago, you could have had Harbaugh. You whiffed on that. You better get a rock star at coach, because Green Bay for the next 5 years is Super Bowl category, starting to me next year. And Detroit's there now.
Hi, everybody. All right, so Colin there seemed, I mean, when he was talking about Jordan Love, it sounded to me like he was saying that the Packers are a year away because Jordan Love, needs to take another step. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I think Jordan Love played a very, very good game yesterday. The Lions, had so many more plays than the Packers. Jordan Love only passed the ball 20 times to Goff's 41 attempts. The Lions had so many more plays than the Packers, and Love had something like 9.5 yards per pass, which was more than Jared Goff. I think the Packers' biggest problem is their defense. We've seen consistently in the game against the Bears a few weeks ago, when the defense needs to get a stop, or at least, try to not allow the Bears to get into field goal range. The Bears get into field goal range. Now, luckily, it ended well for the Packers. They blocked the kick. Awesome. The Packers win that game. But now in 2 of the past 4 games, when there's been close games and you want the defense to get a stop, the Packers defense has not been able to get a stop. And yes, there's been injuries. Jair Alexander, hopefully he comes back soon, and his addition coming back will greatly help this Packers secondary. But the Packers defense, I think, is the biggest problem right now. Typically when you score 31 points, you should win that game. Now against the Lions, they have a great offense, so I think you'd have to even expect more. The Packers played a really good game after the first few drives. The first half, all in all, wasn't great offensively. And so if the offense can get clicking faster, then I think the Packers will be in a much better position. But there's not much room for a lot of mistakes offensively when the defense is allowing this many yards, when the defensive line isn't really getting pressure on the quarterback. They only got pressured 22.7% of the time yesterday. Their season average is 30.2%, which is 28th in the league. So it was a bad night from the pass rush. The secondary consistently allowed Jared Goff to move the ball down the field. So I don't know if I think the Packers are a year away. I think that if Jair Alexander comes back and the offense can clean a few things up, I do think the Packers can still win this year. So I don't think it's all over because they lost to the Lions twice. They've been close this past game. But that's pretty much my thoughts on the situation. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.